Hey there, YouTubers. I'm going to do some more disjoint puzzle pieces. If you've watched my channel for a while, you understand it's kind of like there's a jigsaw puzzle, and I give you a bag where the pieces are already shook up and nice and mixed, and every video there's some puzzle pieces. Really, it just means that I don't elaborate all my themes at once. I can't. There's linear time to deal with. Here we're back in 2007, and we're looking at a bar camp in the U.S. Bank building. So, you know the one maybe? It's there on Grand Avenue, isn't it? MLK is one way south, Grand is one way north, and there's a U Bank there, and it had an upper floor that wasn't being used. So they turned it into what was called, there's a nearby place, they called it CubeSpace. Oh, yes, 622 Southeast Grand. And the whole upper floor was like an incubator for different language groups. And by that I mean computer language groups, technology groups, there's steps and elevator to have these meetups. And it kind of kick-started Portland's culture in a way. It's software culture because we could all kind of get the skills we needed by just meeting in a bank building and so on. Now that all went away after a while. I was kind of pissed about it in my coffee shops network blog, but otherwise there's not a lot of trace that all this happened. But there it is, 2007 BarCamp. Check it out, my Flickr album, photo stream album. All right, so now back to Facebook. As you know, I'm into grid talk, and so I'll retweet. I know that's heresy to say retweet on Facebook, but yeah, it's become a lowercase verb. I retweet the Genie stuff quite a bit. Tulsi continues to be interesting in her policy differences. And of course, the motherboard Earth thing is still going. All the things that I usually do are manifest in Facebook. I wanted to mention going back to there's Carol. She's been recovering from a cold. Market research here on this Trump shirt. Back to Quakers. I wanted to just make this be another breadcrumb, as they say, or jigsaw puzzle piece. In that the story about Taiwan, blocking some Quaker oats from getting in because of how they've been, over abusing high tech in this country. They've kind of turned this place into a food dump, and nobody wants our food, a chemical dump. The U.S. is known for dumping its banned substances elsewhere, but also for using banned substances internally. So, like China takes great pride in banning U.S. stuff, not because it's a trade war, it's because it's unhealthy. But that's not how it gets reported, obviously. So there's all these different slants you could take if you're interested on these different stories. So I'm in this thread saying, the Quakers are not getting royalties or any benefit. There's no payoff in the back room for this company, Pepsi, to abscond with the Quaker visuals, right? Like those are kind of public domain. Anyone could do that. I could sell a cereal called Mormon tomorrow if I wanted. I believe. Anyway, it goes on that this company has, some good ad campaigns. And I talked about one I thought was at least charming in my blog, where I talk about their put Quaker oats on your back and use it as a jetpack. It was kind of retro futurism, and I kind of light mocking of futurism in a way, because the future is never what we expect, right? So then the Quaker website, I just wanted to say that a lot of my viewership is, a lot of my YouTubes, I should say, are accessible just to Quakers, in a small kind of clicky group here, which it's not clicky, it's not exclusionary, it's just obscure and hard to find. I mean, you can find a needle in a haystack and go, wow, you're being really esoteric and cliquish because you're being a needle in a haystack. Well, it's not really the needle's fault, it's just there, you know. And so, to make it full circle, let me go back to my current photo stream. William Irwin Thompson, just throw that name out, William Irwin Thompson, MIT professor who, like Bucky, kind of saw the price we pay for overspecialization, so that now innovating the myth around Athena and promoting Python and doing closed sphere packing using the IVM and there's Zoltar, all this fun stuff that I get to do is not being shared very effectively in academia because, like, MIT does not have the magazine cover the whole number of volumes, right? It would take a 2 or 3 page spread. You'd get some serious writing, and it wouldn't all be politically spun. It would just be some straight math philosophy, probably. But what academic magazine is ready to do anything close to that, right? It's like we've kind of lost our university system in some ways because of over specialization. And this is what Fuller also thought was going to be a problem. Now, to tie off another loose end, um, I was talking about Bucky's career and how he was an advisor to the OSS and helped recruit the guy who made contact with Ho Chi Minh. And the whole tone of that article, you'll have to go back a couple YouTubes, was to kind of, I don't know, counterspin the idea that the U.S. inadvertently catapulted Ho to prominence and basically got the Vietnamese revolution off the ground. In other words, that's a rocket that the U.S. launched, and so the whole war was friendly fire, you could say, a whole war of friendly fire. It's horrible to contemplate, but you'll find so many analysts looking back and saying it was unnecessary, and in a way that's kind of a euphemism in a way. But see, the Deer team was helping Ho against the Japanese, and just the fact that he was worth helping and everybody liked him, and he was a good, he kept almost dying, right? He was a frail guy, and this was hard work for him. But he was making progress quickly, visibly, and he had gone from nobody to like leader of Vietnam from 45 to 47. Now that all led to another big war with the French because they weren't about to recognize this place. But it wasn't that Ho was lying that he was getting American support, and the fact that he had the general's picture, signed picture, and the Colt pistols as gifts, that was not, the paper kind of says, oh, he's misdirecting, he's being misleading, but he's not. He's just proving in a real currency that people can understand that he is in contact with the Americans. And they are supporting him. Otherwise, why would there be an equipment crew here to operate the radio, and why would there be more supplies on the way, and so on? In other words, Americans were very flagrantly, you could say, I mean, it was an open secret that the U.S. was fighting with Ho Chi Minh, right? So that's just a puzzle piece, right? I'm not saying we need to go anywhere. Now, Bucky knew that, right? Because he was, you could say, a government insider. We've talked a lot about Bucky the Cold Warrior on this channel, but I don't say that. Nowadays, we say we're entering a new Cold War with Russia, but it really looks to me more like the Cold War had a detente period with Reagan, where a lot was understood between the two countries and communicated. And some links were forged back then that haven't really come undone. It's not like the progress made in my kind of time was all rolled back with all this, what do you want to call it, neocon stuff, whatever. All these attacks and going around the world being a superpower and being kind of immature and infantile. That was, I don't want to say inevitable, but it's not that nation states act with one mind, just like individual humans don't, which is why I think, not usually, I think why the Ouspensky stuff or the Nicole, where is it? I'll end on this note. Why I kind of think this is useful reading, and maybe just as a short intro to much other stuff, but is it reminds you of even internally, you have different contending voices. It's like you're a committee in a lot of ways that doesn't agree with itself. So to suppose that something like a nation state acts with one mind ever, how could it, right? So there are multi-pushy forces, and Europe had gotten tight and crowded with religious wars, and it was a snake pit that when you jump to North America with that big barrier, the Atlantic, for a long time the US did indeed get to sort of have its own problems. It was like another planet. And the thinking here is remarkably different, I would say, but in ways we don't necessarily notice unless we look at it hard. And then if we, because like the British and the US English and British English sound similar, and it's not about accent. There's a lot of conceptualization that took place as Americans experienced relative isolation compared to Europe. And they were very naive by the time we got to the Vietnam War about colonialism and all the inner struggling. And Truman wasn't really putting Vietnam on his radar at all, which is kind of what this paper is saying, right? And so the whole Vietnam thing, kind of why it was unnecessary, is because it came from not doing homework and not being the communist thing, the whole ideology. It was too easy, right? If you just think in broad brush comic book form about anything really, you're likely to get off track pretty soon unless you're really dealing with generalized principles. But we're talking the messy human affairs here. So I don't think demonizing individuals has much half life. Like to take an individual like, say, Putin or Trump or something, and try to like not understand that humans don't act with one mind, right? It's a groupthink always, right? So there's armies and armies that think certain ways, and to just distill it down to one person, that can really be misleading. So I don't like to do that because it clouds my thinking, right? I like to keep it clear, kind of Wittgensteinian perspicuity, right? Clarity is a value. All right, so thanks for listening. School of Tomorrow. This is kind of like high school in cyberspace, learning history, talking about. I didn't get into whole number volumes, but remember, watch the MIT magazine and see if they get to it at some point. It's been 40 years, might be time. All right, talk to you later.